Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about the first chapter of class 12, the last lesson. And in this story, we are going to cover the explanation, the summary, the introduction part as well as the important MCQ questions of this chapter. So first of all, we will have to start by the explanation of this chapter. So first of all, we will have to understand the things that is given over here in this story. The last lesson is actually written by Alphonse Daudet. And in this story, we are going to understand how the two districts of means France has been captured by Persian rule. So in this story, first of all, we will have to understand the summary. So the first thing that we have to discuss today is the last lesson. The author narrated events about the year 1817 when France was captured by Bismarck led Persian forces. The narrator, Alphonse Daughters, has means narrating the story of the year 1817 when France was captured by the Persian forces and it was led by the Bismarck. So, furthermore, the Lorraine and Alsace districts went under Persian rule, and when the Bismarck-led Persian forces has captured the two districts of France, Lorraine and Alsace, they went under the Persian rule, and there was the discontinuation of teaching French in these two districts. So, when they captured the two districts of France, Lorraine and Alsace, means there was a discontinuation of teaching French in these two districts. That means there were no teaching of French language anymore. So there was an order for the French teacher to leave, and it has been given over there the order to for the teachers to leave that place because there will be no French language will study over there. So what happens? M. Hamel was not able to stay in his old school. So if it happens, then M. Hamel was unable to stay on that particular school on his old school. So in spite of this, the last lesson from him was full of devotion and sincerity. So what happens when these kind of orders has been given by the Persian, then M. Hamel was not been able to means stay over there on that particular school. So he was very sincere regarding his last lesson. So one student of Mr. Hamel was afraid of him, and in this story means we will have to discuss about a student who was very afraid of him. That means who was afraid of Mr. Hamel. So there was an anticipation of punishment from this student when he came to school that day. That means the student who was very fearful from his teacher M. Hamel because he was thinking that if he'll go to the school, then Mr. Hamel will punish him very badly. So, however, he learned that this will be his last lesson. But when he came to the school, then he realized that it was the last lesson of Mr. M. Hamel. So soon he realized the importance of the subject, and when he came to know that it was the last lesson of M. Hamel in the school, then he was very upset. He was realizing that why he was not studying this subject, and suddenly he was means very curious about that particular subject. So this story shows us how people feel when they don't learn their language. So in this story, means France was thinking, or the peoples were also thinking that they don't learn their language. Even means M. Hamel was teaching on that school for almost 40 years, but nobody was means taking interest on studying that language. So they were feeling very means you can say now they were feeling very means strange. They were feeling very disappointed. That's the reason. What happens after that? The narration of this story is a French boy, France, and this is the story you can say it is about the French boy France. France is a lazy boy. As we know that France is a very lazy boy. However, in spite of his laziness, France likes to play and is of a sensitive nature. Means even he was a very lazy boy, but he likes to play means many games, and in spite of these kind of thing, he was a very sensitive kind of a nature. So furthermore, Franz hates his teacher M. Hamel in his school and has no interest in studying French. When M. Hamel was teaching the French language in the school, Franz, one of his students, was not taking any kind of interest to a study to learn the French language. An order has come from Berlin after taking over the district of Alsace and Lorraine in France that the German language rather than the French language should be taught in the schools there. And when means the Persians captured the France two districts, Alsace and Lorraine, then on that time German language will have to means learn for the French peoples in two districts. So it is the school French teacher M. Hamel. Hamel's the last day. So when the order from the German has came over there, then Mr. Hamel was thinking that why he was not giving his 100%. And that when the day came when means M. Hamel was giving his last lecture of his school. So the teacher has been working there for 40 years. Moreover, the teacher has feeling of patriotism. When M. Hamel means gave the order from the German that it was the last day of his school. That means from that day there will be no sign of teaching the French language. That's the reason he was feeling very disappointed, because from the last 40 years he was teaching on that particular school, and when he know that then that was the last day of his school, he was feeling very patriotic, he was feeling very patriotism. Now he is full of nostalgia and grief. That means he was full of sorrow, he was full of sorrow, his mind, his heart, that means everywhere he was thinking about his sorrowness. That means from today onwards and from that day he won't be able to teach the French language. That's the reason he was full of grief, he was full of sorrow. The village man also attended his last lesson so as to honor and respect him. And when the people of France means they will understand that it was the last lesson of M. Hamel in the school, then they would come over there and show the respect towards him. The villagers is regretting and is said that they didn't learn their mother tongue in their childhood. Means when peoples will understand that it was the last lesson and it was the last class of M. Hamel of teaching the French language, then they was feeling very sad. They were feeling very disappointed because in their childhoods they didn't study the French language and the German language was came over there, and from that time there will be no sign of teaching the French language. That's the reason they were feeling very disappointed. And then in the next line, Franz receives a big shock when he learns that this is his last lesson in French. When Franz receives a big shock, that means you can say when Franz came to know that means he will not learn the French language anymore. From that day he's full of shock because he does not know French, because he don't know the French language, because whenever M. Hamel was teaching in the school he was not taking any kind of interest. He means always want to bunk from the class and go everywhere to play, to gather the lays eggs, and the means every time he doesn't means take any kind of interest. That's the reason he was feeling very disappointed as well as he was very shocked. Furthermore, on learning about the last lesson, a sudden interest arose in him for learning French. And when he came to know that it was the last lesson to study the French language, then suddenly he was very means curious to know about the French language. He was taking the interest on that particular subject. But moreover, he pays careful attention and learns everything taught on this last day. And what happens on the last day? When M. Hamel was teaching the French language, he was very curious, he was very attentive in the class, and he wanted to know each and everything. But in a single day, it's not possible to study or learn everything of French language. That's the reason he was a little bit means disappointed. He was means feeling very regretting. That's the reason. And instantly he develops liking for the M. Hamel. And suddenly what happens when he understood very well that it was the last lesson of M. Hamel, he was thinking that means Mr. Hamel was not bad. he was teaching the French language, but why should, means he was not taking interest on that particular subject. His feeling of hatred for him suddenly came to an end, and he was afraid of M. Hamel. He was disliking M. Hamel, but suddenly he was feeling very good for M. Hamel. He was thinking that why he was, means ignoring him studies, why he was ignoring him, why he was not liking him. That's the reason these kind of things has happened, and all the hatred feelings for him has suddenly came to an end. Moreover, Franz develops respect for the hard work and sincerity for his teacher, and suddenly what happens, Franz's mind was developing a different kind of a thinking, that Mr. Hamel was working for so many years in that school and he was teaching very well, but why he was not taking the subject very seriously? And if M. Hamel, means will go from that school, then how he will understand the French language? So Franz is sad and ashamed for being unable to recite his lesson. So on that time, what happens? Franz was feeling very regretful and he was totally sad, and he was regretting why he was not taking interest on that particular subject, why he was not reciting the lessons that has given by M. Hamel. And then what happens? Hamel explains that they are all are a fault for lacking eagerness to learn. When M. Hamel was taking his last lesson in the class, then he was saying towards the people that no one was taking means interest to learn that language, and they don't know how the language was very important for them. But furthermore, he also included himself in his fault, and he was also blaming himself. That means you can say he was also blaming himself why he was not learning the things very well for the peoples, why he was not taking any kind of, you can say, the learning materials for them, why he was not motivating the peoples. That's the reason he was blaming himself, and he blamed himself for lack of sincerity in teaching them. And he was thinking that, means if he will be sincere, then everybody will definitely learn the French language. That's the reason he was blaming himself. There is a reflection of his patriotism in his praise for the French language. He says that French language is the most logical and beautiful language in the world. When he was giving the last lecture, he was saying that French language is the most logical and the most beautiful language in the world. That means according to him, French language is the most beautiful language. It seems that M. Hamel got emotional on that occasion. That means it feels, or it seems that M. Hamel was very disappointed, and he was getting very emotional on that particular occasion when he had to take the last class in his school. Furthermore, he asked the class to guard their language, and he asked towards the people, and he asked to the peoples that he will have to guard their language, and if he'll not guard the language, then definitely means someone can snatch their language. He says that being close to one's language is a way to escape the clutches of slavery. This language will assist them in attending freedom from the Germans. The people realize the significance of their mother tongue. Moreover, they feel that reason of defeat of literacy. What happens means when German peoples will, or the German means language has been studied in that particular districts of Alsace and Lorraine, then they will definitely means want to be able to understand the things well, because if someone has snatched the language or one's language from the another language, then how they will get rid of it? They won't be able to understand those kind of things on that particular moment. So he's he says that, or means everybody on that particular class has felt that the reason of their defeat is illiteracy, and they were thinking on that particular time, if they will be literate, then no one can snatch their language from them. So France feels that it is impossible to remove one's language from a person, And on that particular time when he was in the class, I'm talking about the France, when he was on the class, he was thinking it's very impossible to remove one's language from a person, because if he will study those kind of languages from so many years, then how means someone can snatch their language from a person. This is because it is something that is natural to the person. He thinks that no one can snatch the language from one's mind, because this is very natural. Whatever things that he was learning from the childhood to an adulthood, no one can snatch that kind of a language from any kind of a time. So what happens, this means that no matter how hard the opposition may try, he was thinking that opposition may try again and again and again, but no one can snatch their language. They will they will fail to remove one's language. And he was thinking, if they will try to snatch the language, if they will try to remove the language from a person, then they would not be able to snatch. So, the conclusion of the story is the last lesson summary reflects on the importance of one's language for any race and why it is crucial to safeguard it. And in this conclusion part, we are going to know about how the last lesson reflects the importance of one's language for any race. So he was only saying that it is very important to safeguard the language. It is very means important to conserve their language for any kind of a race, any kind of a person, and any kind of humans. If you know any kind of a language, then no one can snatch it. So you have to means conserve your language from any kind of a point. So this is the story of the last lesson. Now we are going to discuss some MCQ questions of this story. So the first question that we will have to discuss is, who is the author of the last lesson? So the author of the last lesson is Alfonso Daudet. Now the next question is, Alphonse Daudet was from which country? So Alphonse Daudet was from France. Now the next question is, the story last lesson highlights which human tendency? So in this question, the last lesson highlights which human tendency? So what we have to discuss? We have to discuss the procrastination. Now the next question is, what were the things being taken for granted by the people of Alsace? That means what kind of a thing taken for granted by the people of Alsace? So time and school. If they will means given their time to the school, if they will means try to understand the French language, then definitely they will understand the language very well. But means they didn't have time. That's the reason they were never going to the school. Now the next question is, what does the last lesson symbolize? And the last lesson symbolize the loss of language and freedom. Now the next question is, what do the marching soldiers under the window represents? So the marching soldiers under the window represents the defeat of Persia. Now the next question is, from where did the order come to teach only German in district of Alsace and Lorraine? So this order has been came from Berlin. Berlin is in German. So the next question is, why was France reluctant to go to school? He was reluctant to go to school because he had not prepared the lessons on participles. When M. Hamel was teaching the participles in the class, then he was not very attentive and he was not prepared for the lesson on participles. So he was very reluctant to go to the school. Now the next question is, what did Franz find on reaching the book? So in this question, there was a strange quietness when he was reached the school, and when he showed all the peoples, all the crowd has been set over there on the last benches of the class. Then he was means feeling little bit strange, because there was spread a quiet means strange quietness. That's the reason he was feeling little bit means uncomfortable. So the next question is, who had occupied the back benches in the class, and who actually sat in the last benches? The village elders. So village elders is the right answer. Now the next question is, why was France surprised? That means, what happened when France surprised? France was surprised because he had seen he had seen M. Hamel's kind and polite behavior on that day. That's the reason he was very surprised. Now the next question is, why was France feeling regretful and sad? Why was France feeling regretful and sad? So he was feeling very regretful and sad because for not learning participles. So the next question is, whom did M. Hamel blame for not sending students to school? Whom did M. Hamel blame for not sending students to the school? Parents, because he was thinking if the parents would send their children to the school, then they would definitely go to the school. But he was blaming the parents on that particular day. Now, what did Hauser bring? Means in this story there was a one character, Hauser. So what did he bring? He bring the old primer. Now the next question is, what made France forget M. Hamel, ruler and crackiness? So what happened means, what made France forget M. Hamel's ruler and crankiness? The thoughts of his going away, when he was thinking that it was the last lesson M. Hamel, he was going towards that particular place. So he was thinking means everything good about Mr. M. Hamel. So these are the most important MCQs of the last lesson. Hope you guys you will understand this. And if you have any problems, if you have any confusions, then you can ask me. Thank you guys.